just gone 11:15 on Monday the 5th of December. Welcome to another video. I'm off hot tent camping up on a Roman road tonight. You may tell I'm in the middle of Combe Down Tunnel at the moment. I've done so many shots of me coming in and out. I thought it'd be nice to do a little bit of filming inside and see how it came out. I'm heading out from my hometown of Bath along the two tunnels Greenway, Devonshire Tunnel that way. This is Combe Down Tunnel, then I'll go through Lincoln Vale. And then it becomes the Collier's Way, a Sustrans route, and that'll take me into Radstock. And then from Radstock I'll climb up onto East Mendip and hopefully pick up some water at Stoke St Michael's stores and hopefully some processed firewood. I'm heading up to where the Fosseway reaches its highest point on the Mendips, almost 1,000 feet up at Bacon Woods, and it just happens to cross Margary's 45B there, at right angles of course, because the Romans built their roads in straight lines. That's my destination for tonight. Unless anything happens on the route, I'll see you much closer to the destination, that way. It's now 1:10 in the lovely East Mendip village of Stoke St Michael. It's nestled down in this valley. I'm not quite sure what that river is, if that's the Mells or the Froom, but it's lovely, this little recreational area. You may see just behind there is a big ridge line of the hills. That's what I'm going to be climbing up to. I've just stopped at the shop there to pick up some water, and they haven't got any logs, so I've got a bag of kindling. So I really do need to get to the woods sooner rather than later to start getting some big wood processed. It's been dry the last few days. I mean, it is a wood after all, so there should be plenty of freestanding wood up there. I've got my machete, my backhoe foldable saw, and I've got a camping knife, so I've got enough tools to process it. I just need to find some dead standing wood. Just next to the pub is a little shop I've been in, that's why I came down to here. Then I'm going to head up that way where that car is going. In about half a mile, turn left, climb up, and then I'll join Margary's 45B. It's a Roman road. I rode it back in the summer. I'll put a link to that up in the top right hand corner, is it? Now, I'm now high up on Margary's 45B. Gives you an idea, that's looking back north towards Bath. Over the hill there, dropping down precipitously, would be Shepton Mallet. And just up there is the highest point on the Fosseway. It cuts across at right angles. Well, it would, wouldn't it? Because Romans built roads in straight lines. As I understand it, Margary's 45B, from Old Sarum to the lead mines up on Charterhouse, was one of the first roads they built when they invaded Britain. I mean, they came here for commodities and raw materials, I guess. To put the size of it in context, I believe it was about 18 feet wide, most of its length, so pretty substantial trunk road of its day. I mean, to give you a bit of scale, the stones at Stonehenge are 20 feet high, so it's as wide as Stonehenge is high. Reached my destination, Margary's 45B, Old Sarum, near Salisbury that way. Charterhouse and the lead mines up on West Mendip Plateau that way. That's the Fosseway heading down towards Oak Hill and then on to Lincoln. And this is the Fosseway going through Beacon Hill Woods. Drops down very sharply to Canard's Grave and then eventually Exeter. So X marks the spot. So fairly substantial Roman road junction. There almost certainly have been some sort of dwelling or fortification up here, so that's the reason I like coming up here, to sort of get a feel for what it could have been like 2,000 years ago. I always think of this as a big interchange. Junction XXV interchange of the Fosseway. Anyway, I am a responsible camper, so I'll be very careful what I'm doing. I'll be looking for either fallen wood or a dead standing wood. Certainly don't go anywhere near live trees. Obviously be very careful, as a fire risk, even though it is winter. Very careful and experienced. And there's a couple of ancient memorials over there. There's a Bronze Age mound, hill fort I think, so stay well away from that. Don't want to degrade or damage that in any way, and obviously clear up and leave no mess afterwards. Anyway, gonna sort of discreetly go in there. I've got a rough idea where I'm heading. About 100 yards or so into the woods, you come this almost like a picnic rest area here. It's overlooking some really good views up over onto Mendip. It's quite hazy. You can see the little white cars and lorries. That's the A37 dropping down into Shepton Mallet, and that's, I'm not sure if it's that clear on camera, but it's almost like a hump there, a lump. That's the Bronze Age mound. They just ask you to stay well away from that, so clearly I will. I'm just going to go past it, round the back, and just find the equivalent of something like this. So I think even after dark, people aren't going to come in here because it's going to be so easy to get lost. Okay, it's now 4 o'clock and it's been quite a long time since the last update. So I just got on with processing the wood, getting the tent up and the stove. In fact, I think I might need to just lean the flue slightly. I'm going to go through some of the things that I haven't shown you before. I mean, I've shown you putting the stoves together and putting the tent up before. So there's a few things. There's all the wood. I sawed off the wet bits and then split them with a machete and a bit of brute force to sort of like get the dry insides. There's some wood there. Got quite a bit of kindling. Whether that's enough or not, I don't know. First up, my last video was about this. This is my X-Bed sleeping mat. And there's that little pump. I'm gonna put that in there now and inflate that. I'm not going to show you the whole thing, but I'll give you a before and after. It has been quite hard work getting everything ready in time, chopping the wood and getting everything up, the stove together. This is where this pump, if it works as well as it did the first time at home, it's going to be a godsend. So let's get it going. 2 presses. Wow, that was incredible. That was up before I was actually ready for it. Normally it takes me about a minute or 2 to blow it up with my breath, and the pump bag is more trouble than it's worth. I was just starting to get the logs in and get the cage ready to dry some wood out, and it was up. That really is a game changer. As I said, I've seen some people use them the once and then you never see them using it again, so I'm not quite sure why. That's looking south towards Shepton Mallet. You can see a few lights coming up the A37 there. And here's the tent. So another thing I wanted to mention. Okay, when I first got the Woods Walker stove, the flue was very long and it had guy ropes that came out at the top, and I was always tripping over them. And even now I find the flue a little bit tricky to get into place. You've got to get the rings down it, get it into the right shape to get over the adapter to get into the stove at the bottom, get it to the right shape to fit into the spark arrestor at the top. That's almost like a little cap. And cut long story short, I shortened it, and I watched a few videos on YouTube, and the consensus was it's okay to do it as long as you leave enough length. I forget what it was, but it was like a full arm length from where it emerged from the tent. And anyway, I've noticed the last few trips I've got home, it's got holes in it where the spark's coming down. So possibly that was a big mistake. As I said, I really am new to hot tent camping. And so what we did was, I only use this tent about 4 or 5 times a year, so I'm not going to buy another one. I just went onto the internet and got it through Millets actually, and I've got this tent repair. It's basically like a big roll of really strong sellotape, and I've gone through all the holes on both sides. You may see them better in the morning. I've seen other people having flues not much higher than that, so it must be okay. And the other thing was, when I first bought it, again I was just learning, and I watched other people, and the stove jack, which is basically like a heat resistant pad there that goes over this flap. There's a tent held back, the flap. If you didn't want to use this as a hot tent, you would just put that in place. Anyway, they said cut it wider than the pipe. Well, I sort of questioned that at the time, thinking, well, surely that's going to let rain in if it rains. And then other people have since said, no, don't do that. So I thought, oh, that's okay. You can clearly see I've scorched it. I'll just get another one. Well, because I bought the tent and stove jack together from America, I realised through my lack of experience, the stove jack that comes with it is a non-conventional size. The only ones I could find on the internet were this size. That must be the standard size. And so I just thought, well, that's fine. I'll just do what other people have suggested. cut it back in a crisscross shape, just wide enough for the fluid to come out, and then I've just literally put it on top almost like a flap. So it's not going to keep all the rain out, but I would like to think it's going to keep most of it out. Again, just sort of beginner's mistake. I'm going to really try and manage the fire properly this trip and see if I can cut down on sparks and you know, the holes in the tent. I can live with that, to be honest. There's my bike over there, bungeed it to a tree. Going to leave the panniers on, to be honest. The sky's blue still. It's lovely up here. You just hear the roar of traffic, see some lights down in Shepton Mallet. I can see more than that's coming through on the camera. Just such a lovely golden carpet of wet leaves. Just about to light the stove. So there's all the chopped logs I got earlier on. Some ones that are still a little bit damp inside. I'll probably try and dry those on the heat of the fire. Going to start lighting the fire now. I bought some paper from home. I bought a pair of shoes recently that they came in a box, so I've torn the box up and use that for fire starting. So I try and reuse everything. I've got the fire starting kit there. They're like makeup wipes, get hundreds in a pack, the last years. And there's also these fire starters there. I'll chuck a couple of those in just to get it really going. Then of course that should burn quite easily. Voila, let's get it lit. First time. So this is what I'm going to try and control a bit more. That's obviously wide open to get it going, maximum there. Then when it burns a bit later on, try and close that a little bit to try and cut down on the sparks. There's also the dampener at the back. I'll show you that later. It's a little sleeve that's built into the flue itself. I've just lit my stove, got a roaring fire going, got some beer, plenty of water. I'm going to cook a Roman meal tonight, well, Italian, because the highest point of the Fosseway is just over there. These things pump out a lot of heat. I'm going to be cooking on there. I'm going to start cooking my meal. So I'm having nutty spaghetti. I've measured out 4 ounces. It's a recipe I use at home. I'll put it on the screen shortly, but basically it says serves 4. One portion of this does me and Linda one night, so I'd say it serves 2. It's a nice stodgy filling meal. I've tried to have all the ingredients. So basically I need to get some hot water on and get that boiling. I've just taken the wood drying cage off the stove, and then I've put the pan to boil the spaghetti at the back by the flue. I find that the hottest place. There's the damper, so you can see it just literally, there's just a slot it goes in and out of the flue. Can you see the smoke that it emanates? I got it wide open now to try and pump the heat up, but later on this evening, to try and make the wood last, I'll probably put that in a bit more, experiment, and also try and cut down on the sparks. So make the wood last longer, cut down on the sparks. Anyway, going to wait for that to boil. Now I need to knock up the sauce for the nutty spaghetti. So start off, peel an onion, dice it up, and then fry that until it's brown. I've just moved the spaghetti to the front of the stove. Most of the heat is at the back. Frying the onions until they're nice and brown. The onions look nice and brown. The next stage is stir in some curry powder. That's what I've done. That's what I brought the curry powder out in, and some ketchup and some water. So I'm going to add that now to stop that burning. This is the messy bit, so I bought some out in a Tupperware. It's just a case of scooping that in, stirring it in now. And it's just started to rain outside. I've had to open the door because it's so hot in here. So I'm going to stir all this into that and then simmer it for about 5 minutes. This is exactly what happens at home when you scoop it out of a crunchy peanut butter jar. It just takes a while. It's quite viscous, is that the right word? You've got to really keep stirring it in, and then it becomes like a creamy sauce. So that's it, all nice and creamy. We have to keep stirring it. I mean, the trick with this meal is to get the spaghetti to boil around about the same time it needs to be drained and then mixed into this. I've just drained off the spaghetti. Normally at home what I do is I boil some water and sieve it, you know, just to wash all the starch away, but I don't have that luxury out here. And that sauce is starting to sort of congeal a little bit, so I need to get that in there quite quickly. That's pretty much the finished article. That's all blended in quite nicely. The smell is amazing. I think the curry powder gives it a little bit of a kick. The lemon juice makes it tangy, and the peanut butter just makes it really succulent. It's one of my favourite meals. For a cyclist, it's just such a lovely, stodgy, filling meal. There's the finished goods. Steaming plate of nutty spaghetti. Got my first can of Abbott's. Got a second one for later on. And I've got a mince pie for dessert. Going to enjoy this, ready for it. You may hear the roar of the fire. You also may hear the pitter-patter of rain on the outside of the tent. There's one of my repairs. You can see the tapes on the inside. It corresponds with the tape on the outside of that hole. And also I've covered that flue hole. Whether that's the right thing to do, I'm still learning with the hot tenting, but it's quite nice knowing that I'm fairly weatherproof in here. I hope so anyway, because it's only a single skin tent. I've had my meal. I'm on my second beer. Just boiling some water on the stove for my washing up, drying out some wood that I cut earlier on and the logs. I'm 1,000 feet up on the Mendips in December. You may hear my favourite sound outside, the sound of rain on the fly sheet. Well, in fact, it's not even a fly sheet, it's only a single skin sheet, this. So I'm totally reliant on the integrity of the waterproofing and the structure of this tent, but it seems to be holding up. Something so primeval about just knowing, you know, the elements, winter elements, are just literally a fraction of a millimetre the other side of you, and you're in here nice and cosy. I've just stoked the fire up a little bit. I did have to shut the dampeners actually to keep the heat down, because once I shut the door because of the rain, it really built up in here. But the great thing is you can just dry everything. My tea towel, I've just done the washing up, got my socks and my shoes wet a little bit earlier on, just gathering all the wood, processing the wood in the wet leaves, just dry everything out. So different from when I first started winter camping years and years ago. It's really cosy in here. Let me switch the light off and give you an idea of the ambience of that side window. And on the central pole I've got all my Christmas lights up there, and a lantern at the top, CO monitor, carbon monoxide just in case. It's really wild outside, it's pouring down with rain. Nobody in their right mind would be out on a night like tonight. Yeah, about 60 70 yards where they lay by, there's a car parked up playing Merry Christmas Everybody by Slade. It's just a little bit surreal. It's 7:05, just got up, come outside, and you just hear the overpowering noise of traffic. May see the lights flickering through the trees there. That's the A37. That is the equivalent of the modern day Fosseway, but it uses the edge and the ledge of the hill to ease the gradient. The Fosseway just come up that way straight up. When I rode it that time, it was such hard work to get up here, it really was. Makes you realise how just straight and steep Roman roads were. But looking back that way to the right of my tent, when I rode the Fosseway a couple of years back, I actually came up exactly the straight road up over this hill, which that traffic is curling around to ease the gradient, and just getting my bike up there was really hard work. Had to stop 4 or 5 times just to sort of get my breath back, put both the brakes on to stop it rolling back, and then keep pushing it up in stages. I was shattered by the time I got to the top. Obviously it's not a tarmac road, it's a muddy track, but it just showed to me just how steep some of the inclines were on these old Roman roads. Anyway, I'm going to go and get the stove lit now and get some heat on, some hot water on, and some breakfast on. The stove's fired up quickly. I'm very aware that that's all my wood. It should be enough to get breakfast done, but you know, when it's gone, it's gone. And I'm drying out the last little log. I've got some hot water on for some coffee. It's my trusty frying pan with some spray oil in it. I've got the wood burner lit. I'm cooking my breakfast, sausages, bacon, mushrooms, some beans. I've got a coffee already made there, bread and butter, even got ketchup. I'm just going to sit and look at this amazing view from the highest point on the Roman Fosseway, 1,000 feet up on East Mendip. That's my breakfast: ketchup, bread and butter, coffee, looking at this incredible view. Just put some soapy water in the pan to clean it, let that boil for half an hour. Got some more water on for coffees and washing up. Then I'm just going to keep the stove filled up with all my remaining firewood. I've had my breakfast, I'm on my second cup of coffee. My shoemate's quite a good cup holder. The great thing about this stove is it radiates off so much heat, as I keep saying, but you can dry your shoes and my socks and the tea towel from last night. It's so multi-purpose. I've just done my usual with the frying pan. As soon as I dished up my breakfast, I put some soapy water in there and let that simmer away. It's the best way I've found of cleaning a frying pan. Now, I've probably said it before, that's only a cheap frying pan. I've had it years, and a few years back the handle broke off. It had a retractable handle. And I thought, oh no, it's like an old friend, you know, like that Wilson, the ball in that Tom Hanks film. It's a bit like that. And I suddenly thought, I wonder if I could use my old Trangia handle, and it fits perfectly. So rejuvenated, it's had a lease of life. Really mashed up and stirred all the poked all the ashes in there, tried to get all the heat at the back so I can just heat up the remaining last water to do my washing up. I'll start packing up quite shortly, but yeah, just that's the dying embers, still giving out quite a bit of heat. I always try and attach a route map to my rides just to give people an idea of where I've been. So I just thought I'd go over what I did yesterday. Actually, I got the Ordnance Survey map here, the Yeovil and Froome one. I came in this way from my hometown of Bath along the old Somerset and Dorset Railway into Radstock, and then I climbed up there through Hayden, joined that B road very slightly, then that was a long grind up to Holcombe. When you get to Holcombe, you drop down really steeply to cross that river, then you start climbing back up. So you've gained all that altitude only to lose it, and that's where I stopped by the little stream under that shelter in that recreational area, Stoke St Michael, to have my lunch and to pick up the firewood. Then it's along here and then the final climb up, and this is Margary's 45B, and as you can see, this is where it crosses the Fosseway, and that little green area, that's the woods I'm in. They're much bigger than that map suggests actually. So you can see what I've done here actually. This is my route planning map for when I do Roman roads. You can see a lot of the main roads actually follow it, and then like there they've taken the gradient out. That's where I camped my first night on the Fosseway, in between the Fosseway itself and the new road, the A37. You can see they've literally eased the gradient. That is so sheer, that drop up down there or up there. And the same along here. This is where I couldn't ride Margary's 45B on my spring ride this year because it just literally goes through a golf course, and then I joined it there again. You can sort of see what it does. It pretty much follows straight lines. Anyway, a little bit about my next camp in January. I reckoned it the other day. Margary's 45B, and I remember when I rode that, tried to retrace it back in the spring, I realised that the course of the old road must have gone straight. You can see signs of it there at Stock Hill, and then again the modern road snakes round and takes the sting out of the gradient and then rejoins it there. So my next wild camp is trying to straighten the curve. I've sussed it out. I think I pretty much know where the Roman road went. It's going to be at Stock Hill, high up on West Mendip. So that video probably won't be until the new year in January because I've got commitments coming up, and of course there's Christmas as well. Anyway, the Fosseway Roman camp here, and hopefully my next hot tech camp will be there. I removed the flue from the stove jack. You can see there's the flap that could easily convert this into a summer tent. There's the flue over there, just cooling down. That won't take long in these temperatures. And there's the burner. You can feel the heat coming out of there really still. And I'm just going to take the lid off now and just let all the heat disperse for half an hour or so. What I would say is, one of my observations is, it clearly, because it's thin titanium, it warps and buckles when you use it. But I found as long as you open the legs first when you unpack it from its flat state, it tends to sort of hinge together quite well. If you don't do the legs first, it feels like it's all buckled, and as you sort of pull it out, it feels so fragile you're going to snap some of the hinges. So yeah, that's my observation. I don't know how other people find it, whether that's a common occurrence. That's the lid off then, and it does release quite easily. There's all these clips that hold it together, so I just released those to take the lid off. See all the ashes inside. Just picked a stick up, just going to scatter those. You can feel the heat coming off straight away, but if I just keep doing that, within half an hour or so, that'll be cool enough to just bury in a little pit and douse it with water, obviously. I bought this Woods Walker stove around about the same time as Sandy did. He's Wiltshire man on YouTube, and one of the things he said was he's got a thin plate of steel and just line the bottom. Clearly it adds a little bit of extra weight, but I think it'll save the bottom burning out, because I had a chimney at home, a really cast iron solid one, and the bottom of that burnt out eventually. So I mean, bearing in mind this is only micro thin titanium, so I'm on the lookout for a sheet of metal that I can just keep in there all the time to act as almost like a fire floor protector. Letting the cool air up here cool everything down, just stirring the ashes every few minutes. There's the flue over there. When I come to roll that, you roll that at 90 degrees perpendicular. I know this might sound crazy, but it folds up almost the size of quite a beefy bicycle pump, a micro pump as well, not a full length one. So it does fold up very small. It's got shape memory as well, and the minute you start rolling it, it remembers that shape. When you unravel it, it remembers the shape of the flue. It's pretty smart. Just going to keep stirring these ashes, and then in about half an hour, 45 minutes, I'll dig a little pit and bury them. I've got plenty of water as well, natural water as well. I used to douse all that. Certainly take no risk with starting a fire up here. And then all I've got to do is try and dismantle all of that, pack it onto that, and then head home. Starting to pack up everything now. I'm going to try and use this pump to deflate my mat fully. This is great. After about a minute or so, it's almost fully deflated. You can see it shrink. You can almost see it having the life sucked out of it, actually. That's going to make oh yeah, that's really, there's no air in there whatsoever. This pump is absolutely fantastic for deflation as well. So you take the nozzle from there, you put it on there to inflate it, and then you just do the reverse to deflate it. So you've got to make sure that's clear. You can't have that facing the ground, because quite a bit of air comes out of that, and it just shrinks it. It almost like vacuum packs it. And while it was doing that, I went ahead and manually folded and deflated this. It's my Trekology pillow, same as I'd have done with that. And I so often used to get, and I got it today actually, you go to fold it right at the end and there's an air pocket in it, and you just have to press the valve to let the remaining air out. Sometimes you have to unfold it and start from scratch. I didn't have to do that today. There was just a bit of air I could release at the end. But with those, it almost always happened, and sometimes I'd have to have a go 2 or 3 rolls to really get all the air out, so I could force it in quite a tight stuff sack. Went in fine today. I almost did that as quick as I did that. Just heard the motor very, very close, looked at my tent, and right up the Fosseway behind me, 2 guys on a quad bike come up in wax jackets. They look like they may be farmers or wardens possibly, so whether they come over and say anything, I don't know. I mean, the worst they can do is tell me off and tell me to leave, which is what I'm leaving anyway. Another bit of kit I really like for winter, these X-Ped tent boots. I think they're called booties, but yeah, they got It's not a soul you could walk very far in, but basically if you need to get up in the night or anything like that, it'll get you outside the tent without having to put shoes and socks on in the middle of the night. They're very, very warm once you put them on. It's almost too warm actually. I had to take them off last night because of the heat that the stove was pumping out, and then I put them on a bit later as it cooled down. They're thermal lined down, I think, X-bed, and then they fold up really small, and they've got these two straps to sort of like bind them together. So yeah, that's a really good bit of winter kit, and that's them packed up, strapped together, fairly compact, squeezed down in some of the corners, the nooks and crannies in the panniers. They weigh next to nothing. I did bring a hot water bottle last night, but I just didn't feel the need for it actually. It never ever got that cold. Even when I woke up in the night, it was just my nose that was a little bit cold. As I said, I just pulled the baffle tight to form the mummy shape around the top of my torso, around my shoulders, and I warmed up again quite quick and went back to sleep. Pretty much got everything in piles how I want it now, ready to pack up. Going to start getting the stove done first of all. So you can see I've configured the tent. I've said this before, I try and do 3 of the 4 quadrants and keep this area here right underneath the stove jack for the stove itself and the firewood, and then I try and form a bit of a skirt along the back just to keep the cold air from coming in. Not perfect, but it does. And then that's going to be my heavy duty ground sheet. I'll put it outside shortly. First things first, I want to get the ashes buried and dampened and then roll the flues, so hence the gloves. So first job is to put the woods walker stove away. So I've just prepared my ash pit. It's pretty much what I do for my latrine. Moved all the leaves back, dug a pit with a stick, and then I'll scatter the ashes in there, tread them right in, water them, and then bury them with earth, and then cover it with the leaves. That's the ashes dispersing. Just going to scuff them in. Then I've kept plenty of water back. All I want is just enough to clean my teeth. That's just a soggy mess now. Another tread in. And then just cover it with leaves. I'll have to put the camera down to finish that. And that's where my ash pit is, buried under there. Soil back in and the leaves scattered. Bit like my latrines, nobody's going to come across that by accident. So there's the stove all folded, the lid's ready to go on the top, there's the damper, there's the accessory there, the flat steel cage to dry the chopped wood with, and then there's its packing case. So I'm going to put that together, get that ready to go on the bike first of all. It does come with these rubberized pads, and before I fold it down properly to store it, I put each of those, correspond it with the glass, so it just protects the glass. You may just see the black square of the rubber protector there, and there's one underneath the other glass. Now fold the legs back up again, flat pack it, put the lid on, and then strap it into the case. Then I've just got to unroll the flue. I just packed the stove up, so that's it, flat packed, strapped down in the case. And there's the flue all rolled up. And what I do to stop any rattling, I just pack it out with the gloves. That's what I use for sort of processing the wood and tending the stove, because it can get pretty hot. The dimensions are, I would say, about the same as a laptop bag, obviously a little bit deeper, but it fits in my panniers, no problem whatsoever. It's well worth the weight. So yeah, the Woods Walker stove. I've got everything out the tent, laid on that heavy duty ground sheet. That's my bag of rubbish I'll be taking. I'm just going to take the tent down now, because what I try and do is I put the big items in the back panniers. So the Woods Walker tent stove is in one of the panniers, and I'll put my tent and my sleeping bag in the other pannier. That really bulks them out, and then I can start squeezing things down through the middle. I mean, if it's raining, I'd have to do all this packing inside. Just make sure the other vent's shut, and then I'll drop this. Oh, that's where I got my dead standing wood from yesterday. Just needed a little bit of drying out, but there's plenty of it around. I certainly didn't touch any live wood. Well, it wouldn't burn anyway. I think what I've been told to identify dead standing wood, if it snaps it's dead, if it bends it's not. and also if it bends it wouldn't burn anyway, it'd be too moist. It's coming up to midday and I'm packed up and ready to go. You can probably tell I'm in absolutely no hurry whatsoever. Why would I want to with that lovely view there? That's where the fire pit was. Just poured the remainder of my water on that after I cleaned my teeth. Probably overkill, but it just seemed a worthwhile way to waste water. And that area there, I've kicked a lot of leaves over. It's slightly flat and that'll regenerate within literally a day or so. Look at the stunning colours here, all the mosses at the trees. So I'm ready to head home. If you've got this far, thank you very much for watching. I was looking at the Strava profile of the ride here last night in my tent, and it literally is like almost like the summit of a mountain. So that's why yesterday was actually quite hard, although it's only a shade over 18 miles. It's pretty challenging to get up here with all that weight. I'm going to go home a slightly different way, head along Margary's 45B that way, drop down over Margary, then snake my way down through Vinegar, Ember Pond, and then there's a really nice fast B road down towards Midsummer Norton, and I can get on the, I think it's called the Five Arches Greenway. Again, it's part of the Somerset and Dorset Railway. You can pretty much take that all the way back into Bath. It goes to within a couple of streets of my home. The other video, of course, I mentioned earlier on was I'm going to camp along Margary's 45B along that way at another summit. That really will be after Christmas. I'm not sure if I'll make another video before Christmas, so if I don't, I'd just like to wish everybody a very Merry Christmas and all the best for 2023. I am thinking in interim ride to get a train over to Cardiff and ride to one of the Welsh thankful villages. I've plotted a route for it. It's just a case of finding the time. Whether I can do that before Christmas or not, I'm not sure. Next week me and Linda are down to Paynton, Goodwington Sands for a week. We're going on the train of lights, which is fantastic. Slightly complicated. We're going to get caught up in the rail dispute, so we may have to come home a day early, chance coming home on a Friday, or even find an alternative like a National Express and buses. We've got some options. We're going to sort of play it by ear really. There may even be a chance of getting home on the train. Don't even care if we don't get home till 10 o'clock, as long as we're together. We'll have a laugh. Anyway, that's it. I'm going to head home now. Thank you very much for watching. See you next time.